bringing our next guest. It's going to be Gené Teare, Senior Data Editor at CrunchBase. So welcome to the show, Gené.
Great to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're talking venture funding. It seemed like 2024 was pretty good for funding, and then you look at the first quarter of maybe 2025, pretty solid also. Do you expect these trends to continue?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So last year we had north of 300 billion going into venture, around 100 billion into AI. And what we've seen this quarter is it's the biggest quarter since the slowdown, 113 billion. And of that, 60 billion going into AI. And obviously that AI spend was massively driven by the 40 billion funding in OpenAI. So it wouldn't have been a stronger quarter if that OpenAI deal, the biggest deal I think that we've ever seen in the private venture markets to OpenAI, 40 billion, I think almost 4 times as big as the last largest round, which was around 14 billion into the Ant Group in China in 2018. So, yep. Yeah, dollars are up in Q1.
Yeah, when you look at that, the trends that we've been seeing, they're dominated by the big players in here. And you mentioned OpenAI. You've got Anthropic. You've got some other ones that are still raising capital at this point. Do you still think that, maybe that was the top of the market because the uncertainty that the tariffs are bringing in, maybe some of the administration regulations and things of that nature are going to slow down this area, or do you just feel like this is maybe a blip and the trends will continue?
I'm not quite sure what to say because I think there is this massive unleashing of value to AI. So it's not a surprise that you had such a big, well, it is a surprise, but it's not coincidental that you had such a big round in the first quarter. And then also Wiz, the biggest exit we've ever seen for a private venture-backed company, went out for 32 billion. And that's because of the huge momentum around AI and how these are refactoring and changing businesses. Google's business is changing and it needs to get out there and get ahead of it. So I think the markets are changing significantly. I think what's going to hold back venture this year and into next is really more on the exit side. So AI, there is excitement and enthusiasm. However, so much money has gone into the venture markets. In 2021 at the peak, it was around 700 billion. And then the exit markets kind of shut off at the end of 2021. So we've had 3 years of very little IPO activity. M&A front has also been slow. People expected that to pick up. I think an interesting thing we can talk about, Q1 was the strongest M&A quarter that we've seen since 2021. And that's obviously to do with the regulatory environment improving. So some expectation, I think, that the IPO markets this year are going to get a little stronger. CoreWeave went out, but we've now heard that both Klarna and StubHub are delaying their roadshows. So these are not good indicators because what the venture markets are lacking the most is there's not, innovation is coming, that's happening. It requires a huge amount of investment, but there's been no liquidity or very slow liquidity for 3 years. And what you will see is into the end of this year and next year, some of that investment into private markets is going to dry up somewhat if we don't see returns to investors who've been held back for 3 years.
Yeah, we want some certainty in markets, and I think not only in equity markets, the bond market, but also here in venture funding. When you take a look at that, you mentioned some of these companies have put off IPOing, and I get that at this point. But with the equity markets kind of in flux, 2 straight years of over 20% gains, it seems like if we get some clarity on tariffs and the trade headwinds at this point, that maybe people are going to start looking for alpha in this space and start funding even more. And we get through some of this uncertainty that, hey, it's really going to start to pick up in the latter half of 2025. Is that what you guys are seeing?
Well, what we've heard from people is every time I talk to an analyst about the IPO markets open up, they sort of put it out a year. So in 2024, I heard, okay, it's going to be 2026. In 23, I heard it would be 2025. And so we're always putting it out. But what we have seen, as I said, with CoreWeave, there's some very big names this year have begun to announce their plans to go public. And so I think definitely those big names going out, CoreWeave did pretty well. It's above its IPO price, I think, even from this morning. So I think if we see some activity, some improved activity this year, which I think is the expectation. And if this trade war does settle down, I'm not sure how much it's going to settle down. That's certainly going to drive a lot more momentum into, these private kind of financings.
All right, great discussion. Appreciate it, Gené. Have a great weekend.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right, that's Gené Teare of CrunchBase breaking down venture funding.